Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Last October, Professor Eric Kaufmann resigned his post at Birkbeck University after 2 decades of service, citing political differences. He is a specialist on nationalism and political and religious demography and has authored and edited multiple books on these subjects. But he didn't like the direction of the teaching, so he left. Now he's launched the first public online course on woke at a Western university, based at the University of Buckingham. And Professor Eric Kaufmann joins me now. Welcome to the show. Great to be here. So, you left Birkbeck University. What was your reasons for this?
Well, yeah, so basically what we have in terms of the crisis of the university now is two things. One, you've got pressure from the administration on you that might discipline you, punish you for speech or for things you write.
Yeah, for the wrong opinions.
For the wrong opinions. But I think more insidious than that is the kind of peer pressures that operate. So other people who may think you're radioactive and don't want to be around you, but they also may not want to hire you, promote you, publish you. So you are so dependent in a collegiate profession on your colleagues and not pissing them off and being on the right side of them, that if you have views that are heterodox, which is, you know, in a profession where it's 9 to 1 left to right, and you don't fit the 9, then, you know, there's an issue there. So you're going to have to watch your step. But
it didn't used to be the case, did it? I mean, if you go back a few decades in universities, it was just considered the norm that you would have people of various viewpoints. That was just accepted and standard, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, a couple of things have happened. One is, you know, in the mid-60s, it was maybe 2.5, 3 to 1 left to right, not 9 to 1.
Yes.
And in the elite universities now, I mean, Harvard, it's 82 to 1, right? So we're talking about the extreme monoculture that's formed. And also the left is more moralistic and absolutist, morally absolutist than it used to be. So that's quite a cocktail. And so I kind of thought, you know, in a way I have to get out and find a free space.
So part of this course that you've devised is to kind of explain or at least teach people about this particular phenomenon.
Well, exactly. I mean, woke is something that's surged in the press. It's covered very widely, and yet silence from universities in terms of studying this dispassionately.
Well, that's because they embody it,
right? Yeah, exactly. They think it's being a good person rather than an ideology just like fascism or communism or anything else.
Yes.
So it needs to be studied, and so that's what the course is doing, which is open, it's online, open to the public, so, you know, please do sign up. Also, of course, there is... this week, I'm going to be launching the new Center for Heterodox Social Science at the University of Buckingham. And I should say the course is also based at the University of Buckingham, which is aspiring now to be the only free viewpoint diverse university out of 181 institutions in Britain. So within that, this new center is going to be a place where non-progressive, not anti-progressive, but non-progressive views will have a critical mass. And so we can explore questions that are difficult or impossible to explore in a regular university.
I mean, it's so sad to see that often some of the most elite universities seem to have these problems. Oxford and Cambridge are particularly plagued with it. I mean, is it the case that we're just going to have to go to new institutions? I mean, Buckingham is a private university, dates back to the 70s, doesn't it? So it's relatively new. Is it just that we're going to have to, students who are intellectually curious are going to have to just find other places to study?
Unfortunately, I think that this is the only way the system can reform. I mean, we can have the Higher Education Freedom Bill, which is great in terms of clamping down on that institutional punishment. But when it comes to peer pressure and ostracism, there's nothing that a bill can do. So you have to create these centers that have a little bit more of a critical mass of sort of dissenters in order to actually get these ideas out there. So, yeah, a parallel system in a way of centers, journals, funding bodies. It's starting to emerge now, but we need this for universities. We have it for the media, we have GBNews, etc. We need to have something like that for universities. Otherwise, we're just going to lose all of the viewpoint diversity.
So students who are interested in exploring other ideas, not necessarily even endorsing them, but just discussing them and exploring them, they should be going and signing up for this centre, yes?
Well, that's what I would encourage them to do. I mean, the centre is a research centre, but it will have teaching, and it's got to grow. So we're looking to sort of fundraise and recruit students so that we can grow and hire more people.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, my course on woke, you know, on my Twitter, you can see on the pinned tweet how to sign up, various different options. But that's just the beginning, because we want to study subjects that have been ignored. And one of them I mentioned, obviously, the far left, the woke left. These are things that need to be objectively, dispassionately studied. But there are also a whole range of other topics. I don't know if you saw Roland Fryer, the Harvard economist who had a video up on Free Press where he talked about having police protection for 30 or 40 days just for publishing a finding that black Americans were not disproportionately targeted in police shootings. And for that, he essentially had to go into hiding. But
that's an incredible story, isn't it? You know, I mean, he's dealing with statistics. He's dealing with facts, analysis. How have we reached the point where someone like that would be demonised simply for reaching the unfashionable but true conclusion?
Well, exactly. And don't forget, this happened in 2016, prior to the George Floyd stuff. So if actually you had an open climate of opinion, people might have been a little bit less credulous when some of the claims around thousands of young unarmed black men being killed by the police instead of 10 or 12.
Yes.
And they might not have overreacted to this. So it could have saved thousands of lives, millions, billions of dollars.
Can I ask you about why is there a propensity among academics for this kind of groupthink? Because I had Joe Phoenix on the show last week, who has been through a campaign of harassment over a number of years from academics, from her colleagues at the Open University, and a judge recently found against those people who had been harassing her. But nonetheless, that's a lot. She got diagnosed with PTSD. It was a terrible case. Why is it, and I've been in scraps online with academics, they tend to be the most truculent. They tend to behave like teenagers. But why is it that the smartest people behave like the stupidest?
Well, yeah, I think what it is a couple of things. I mean, one is you have this new moral absolutism on the left, and it doesn't matter if you're in the arts or in academia or elsewhere. You're going to get this attitude, inflexible attitude. But the other thing is, I think, is this monoculture. So once you're at 10 to 1 left to right, reality starts to drift away from you, and the center line becomes left biased.
Yes.
And so you start to, and people riff off each other and they push each other towards the extreme. So that can happen. The other thing that happens, of course, is when it's 10 to 1 left to right, and the left and the right, even if they're discriminating against each other equally, which they don't, by the way, but even if they did, the impact of that discrimination ideologically is 10 to 1 on whoever's the dissenter. So we've now got a situation where that discrimination hits so hard because it's multiplied by their advantage.
I mean, it's always been the case, hasn't it, that the right have tended to view the left as just a bit naive, but the left have tended to view the right as not just wrong, but evil. I mean, I think that's really the problem here. This gets exacerbated when there are the kinds of, when it's skewed so much against a particular viewpoint.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, but I think all of that's gotten worse. I mean, so studies, for example, of especially young university-educated people, 18-year-olds in 2000 versus an 18-year-old in 2016, same question. In 2016, that 18-year-old is a lot more intolerant. And so even if you're a leftist, in 2000 versus 2016, I mean, they've just become a lot more absolutist and less morally relativist. They used to be a bit more morally relativist, and it's now moral absolutism that's really dominant.
Do you think that maybe there's a lot of academics there who do maybe have heterodox views, but they just keep them to themselves because they want to get promoted and they want to get tenure or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think there are more academics with heterodox views than you hear about, but I also wouldn't want to exaggerate, because some people think, oh, it's just people are scared, and if they spoke up, you know, sanity would prevail. But actually, it's not entirely the case. So, for example, most academics oppose cancel culture, but roughly by a 2 to 1 ratio, they would support, for example, mandatory diversity statements. More of them would support quotas, race and gender quotas on reading lists, than would oppose it, by about 45 to 30. So, yes, there are people who are scared, but there's a lot of people who kind of believe what's on the top of the tin, and they don't really look under the surface of what DEI means to find out just how illiberal it is.
Which is why you need a centre to study it and expose it.
Exactly. It's the only way we can sort of create this alternative knowledge and these alternative networks, I think, is going to be to start something new and then hope to influence the mainstream. That's the goal.
So just finally, just remind us, how do they find out more information about this?
So go to my Twitter, which is @EPKAUFM. Go to the pinned tweet, and you can find all the information there.
Fantastic. Eric Kaufmann, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.